sounds like all of you know Rosie, but I'm really delighted to have her here tonight. Dr. Rosie Kuhn. Kuhn or Kuhn? Kuhn. 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 She'll be speaking about the endurance during the writing process. In her talk, I think it's titled "Identify and Kick All Excuses to the Curb so you can finish your book." Her C average in high school was her #1 justification for not writing her book, and then now she has 13 that are self-published in many languages, and she'll show some of those to you. She's also been a life coach for the past 20 years, worked alongside many writers who are passionate and desperately blocked to write their books. And she's been their thinking partner to help clarify their obstacles and AKA justifications, reasons, and excuses, so they can consciously choose to either move ahead with their commitment to write or continue to embrace their justifications, reasons, and excuses. If you're ready to face yours during this playful, inspiring, and potentially empowering conversation and finish your book, I'm going to switch the camera now over to the main camera, the main show, where you can see Rosie, and we can get started on this journey. Thank you all very much.
Am I there?
You're there.
Okay.
You're live.
Hi, you guys. I keep wanting to look at the computer where Carol is, so I'll do both. But my intention is to keep this short. If we have an hour, that's great. Because Pat, if you have to go, that's great. And we'll try to make this all happen within this time. My intention is to be with you in this conversation so that can happen, that you can begin to come to a place of going, yeah, I can move ahead. We'll see what happens. So as Carol gave you my information, I brought a bunch of books, but a few of them that I brought, this is actually a couple of books that are full books. I have books that are, I'm calling it a full book. This is a full book with chapters in a sense. And this is one of the books. This is called Dilemmas of Being in Business. This is 26 blogs. So I wrote blogs weekly, and then I took those blogs and put them in a post, in a book. And so I've self-published all my books, and that's been really, really a good thing for me to do. So my question I want to start out with for you guys, and it's primarily Fred and Marge. I don't know that you're going to have much to say. I think you're just here to listen. So Patricia and Teresa, I think it's just the two of you. You have a little almost private coaching session here. So what is it that you're hoping to get from this conversation? I'll keep looking over here at the camera, but then I'll look over here at the computer. So what is it that you're hoping to get from this conversation today? Thank you. Patricia?
Well, is the topic to finish writing? Do I understand that?
Yeah, so tell me what brought you to this conversation tonight?
Well, you and writing. I'm very interested in that. Okay. I've also done a little bit of writing, and I kind of wanted to finish. Actually, I started a journal that I kept for a year when I was living in New Guinea, and I transcribed the journal, but I haven't quite finished it, and I kind of wanted to know where to go from there.
Okay, great. So your intention is to finish this journal.
Yeah, finish transcribing it and then decide how to put it together, I guess.
Okay, so transcribing is the most important part right now.
Right now, yeah.
Okay, great. Teresa?
Hi there. I'm curious. I saw the poster in the library, and the title appealed to me. I'm in probably the third draft of my memoir, and so there's two things that appealed to me. I went to your website and noticed your orientation towards spirituality, and I know that there's some takeaways at the end of my memoir that are tied to spirituality, especially my connection to nature. And so I was just curious to find out more about your work, because I don't have a lot of language for it. I have a lot of feelings about it. And as a writer, I'm wanting to articulate it at the end of my book. So that was one thing I was curious to get to know you and your work more.
Okay.
And then, of course, I have some, now that I'm getting further along, I have some obstacles, fears about sharing my work that
Okay.
is changing the way maybe I would be editing if I wasn't worried about who I was sharing it with, and the thinking about readers and response is an obstacle for me to finish.
Right. Got it.
Hmm.
This is just shorthand so I can talk to it. It's not like you're going to be able to read this. So thanks, Teresa. That's great. I'm excited and I'm happy to share. If you have questions, just ask, and I'm happy to share what I can with you in this conversation.
Thank you.
Pat, what is it that's, in a sense, you've got your journals and you want to transcribe them, or you want to finish transcribing them? What's gotten in the way of transcribing and finishing the transcription?
Laziness. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just have not very much more to go, but I'm interested really. Yeah, I mean, that's just the mechanical thing, finishing the transcription. I just want to hear more from you about putting it together, editing it, how to write it, make a memoir out of it or something like that.
Okay. So the first thing it seems to be one of the biggest obstacles for people, because they get caught in the other elements of how do you edit and how do you publish and how do you do those things, that all quite often gets in the way. I'm still looking at the computer as opposed to looking at the camera, so I'll start looking at the camera. Is to decide to finish what you're doing. Decide to finish the transcription, because that's what you want to do. You want to finish that transcription. And Teresa, you want to finish this third draft, and that completion, in a sense, has to be the first commitment. And what most people do is they get lost in the yes buts, and I don't know how to move forward after I got the transcriptions done, or I don't know what to do with that. Then that gets in the way of just saying, okay, let's just finish it and put a period on the end of that project.
Mhm.
Then, it's like, okay, let's commit to doing that. Done. Now, what do we want to do with it? So quite often, we've got somebody else joining us, I think.
Eileen, welcome.
Hi, Eileen.
Hi. Hi.
There you are.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Eileen, we're just getting started with this conversation of finishing your book, or where you are in that process. So what is it, we're just jumping in here. So what is it that has you come to this conversation? What is it that you want by the end of this time together?
Well, the title says it all, I think.
Yes. That's a great job.
And going off in different directions too, thinking, oh, I've got this topic, and yes, I have a lot to say. And then I hear people talk about characters in their books that they get to know them so well that they take them in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I've had for several years. I've had both a fictionalized, loosely autobiographical writing going, and then thinking, oh, well, no, what I have to say is a message that is that would be so helpful. I need to really personalize it more. So that's been my struggle.
Okay, so you're in the process of writing a book,
Right.
It's somewhat autobiographical and somewhat fictional.
Yes,
And you're at that point where you're going, I think I need to make this more personal, more autobiographical rather than fictional.
yes, yes,
Okay.
and been stuck there for several
Okay.
months.
Okay. So what is it that is the sticking point for you there? What has you stuck at that point? It sounds like you made it a choice to say nonfiction. What makes you stuck? What creates that stuckness?
I think probably the fear of exposure.
Okay.
My apologies for the airplane noises. They'll come and go.
That's all right. I'm right across the street in the apartments. I hear them too.
It's in stereo. So it's
Yeah.
fear of exposure.
One thing, yes,
And
yes.
what's another thing?
And other people involved.
Okay. So you're telling a story and
yeah.
that may impact other people. Is that correct?
And may impact other people, yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. What else? Anything else? Just those two things that are sticking?
Well, approaching it like a job, I guess, and people, everything I've read and authors I've listened to, and I'm old, I've been around, I've been reading a long time and reading, I love memoirs and I love autobiographical and biographical material. So when people talk about it being a job, and COVID was really, I guess, COVID happening, and I had an accident and I was at home for a long time and I couldn't work, and those two things combined to make me think do more writing. But establishing a discipline is still a stopping point. Like, how much time do I devote to this? Sit down here at my little table and write 5 hours a day? Or should I just continue to be, when I'm inspired, write 2 or 3 hours one day and then wait, 2 or 3 other more days and not write anything and write 6 hours another day? Well, so what's the long-term goal? And yeah.
It's a great question. Great question.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think everyone is different. I write based on inspiration. So I get an idea to write and then I write. And so that might be, and generally I would write 2 or 3 hours a day. That's it. And that's all I had. My brain would just get too tired. So finding that if you take it as it's a personal, for me, it's a calling to write, to have something like this, whether it's your journals or your memoirs or, your story or whatever that is. It's a part of you that wants to be in the world, or it just complete, right? And the most important thing for me is to bring it to completion before you decide what you're going to do with it. Most of us think, oh, the only reason to write a book is to publish it. And for me, the only reason to write a book is because it wants to get written.
Yes, that's
The only reason
that drives me.
Yeah. So when it's fun, then you do it. When it's not fun, you don't do it. That's my operating procedure. If it's struggling or it doesn't, if I sit down to write and nothing's there, then nothing's there. And what's the point of forcing it? Where I want this to be something that is nurtured and it is nourishing while I'm going through the process. That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So this is my autobiographical book.
Oh, I love the cover. Is that your first communion?
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's neat.
So it's called The Unholy Path
I have one
of a
very
Reluctant
similar.
Adventurer. Say that The Unholy Path of a Reluctant Adventurer. That's the name of it. Okay. So this, in a sense, wrote itself. It didn't write from the beginning to the end. I would write something of my childhood, and then it would take me to when I was in my 40s and going sailing, and then it would take me back into my 30s, or back and forth. It told me where it wanted to write, what it had to say. And that's a way that I write. And everyone has their own sense of structure, what structure you need. But this is the way that I write. The same with, this is Dilemmas of Being in Business. This is a book of blogs. And I wrote Aging Like a Guru. Those are all blogs. Parent Like a Guru, all blogs. Diet Like a Guru. Those are all blogs. They're just, 1,000 words. And then I put them together and there's a book, right? So that's become an easier way for me to write, because it's only these little tiny pieces that are inspired, in a sense. They want to be written and put someplace. So.
And when did you write each of those? Excuse me.
Oh my goodness. I've been writing since my first book I wrote when I was 56, I think. And that was this book. This is called this one is called Self-Empowerment 101. And it was meant to be part of a coaching training program. It was just supposed to be part of the manual, but it wouldn't grow. It just stopped. And so I had to listen to it and then say, this is what it wants to be. And this book was written, a friend of mine wrote his first book in 3 months. And we were talking about it. And he said, the same thing I'm saying to you is, don't think about what you're going to do with it. Just if you're committed to writing a book, commit to write the book. So my commitment was to finish this in 4 months. And so I wrote it in 4 months. And then it took another year to get the cover done, to get it edited, to get it formatted. All of those other things took another year. But for me, the commitment was to get it written. And that was what I committed to him, was I'm going to write this in 4 months. And so that's what I did. I keep looking down. I should look up. So what's going on for you guys as you're hearing me talk about this stuff? That's the most important part of this conversation, is what's going on for you as you're hearing me, listening to me, maybe listening to me.
I find it helpful to hear you talk about listening to what the project wants to be. I've worked with 2 different editors who've looked at my work so far as sort of a developmental stage of it. And they came back with a lot of very opposite feedback. And so I find myself, I worked with one for about 6 months and was writing towards their feedback, and then someone else, and I started writing towards their feedback. And I'm at a point where all my comments in my manuscript is, well, if I do it this way, these are the edits. And if I do it that way, these are the edits. And so I think it's helpful to hear, like, maybe I need to step back and do some deeper listening for
Beautiful.
What it needs to be for me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Because this is, it was interesting when I was writing this book, I think, because when the people that read it were people that had trained with me but they were also really experienced in writing, whatever that was. And they would say, Rosie, this is good. And in chapter 3, you're missing your voice. You've lost your voice here. And I'd go, I don't even know what that means. Right? I don't even know what that means. And it's like, I realized that my style, or the quality of my expression through this, was that's what was grabbing them. That's what was nourishing them, was my voice was with them in the reading. And when they lost my voice, the book lost its energy. So that was wonderful feedback. And I've taken that into every single book. I brought all 13 books, no, 12 books with me to show you, but they're all, each one has that quality of me that makes it me. And that's what I want for you guys, if that's what you desire. In a sense, I'm sure Pat, in your journal, that's you, because this is your experience that you're sharing.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so. Yeah.
So, Pat, what's showing up for you as you're hearing me say these things?
Well, I'm taking notes. That's very helpful. But the idea of finding your voice, I kind of like that idea of the how it comes out, and I'd like to think about that a lot.
Okay.
And yeah, don't lose your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's when I'm writing something, I start out with, what's the intention? What's my heart's desire here? What's the intention that I'm of the outcome of this project, this book? What is it that I'm wanting to make sure gets into this, whatever this is? And that's where I start, because then the book's got the heart. This is the intention, and that keeps me going through the project, making sure that everything is lined up and stays consistent with that intention.
Is there much difference between writing fiction and nonfiction, like a memoir, stuff like that? I wonder how you find your voice in fiction, say, versus personal.
I would think Ellen would be able to maybe ask that. I've never had the courage to do fiction, because I think it would always come back to me, because they say most fiction is actually, stories and things that are in life that are just put into a fictional situation. But Ellen, you might know something about that more than I do. You might have experience with that, Ellen. No? Eileen? Sorry. No. Okay. You're muted right now, Eileen.
No, I'm not trained at all in writing. This has just been my, I've kept journals for years, and so this is just where I've gone with it. It just feels like that. There's you said, what's your heart's desire? It's, do you mean that what is your heart's desire to say? What was your heart's desire? Was it in the beginning, your first book, I'm going to write a book, that's my heart's desire? Or talk about that. When's your first book come out, and what?
Well, I was 56 when my first book came out. And like I said, when I was in high school, I had a C- average, and I may have had a D+ average in college. So, I was not meant at all to be an academic or anything like that. I had very poor writing skills. So it was only when I was working on my dissertation, I did a dissertation on sailing as a transformational experience, that people were exposed to my writing and they went, this is good. And I'd go, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not a writer. I'm not a student. I'm not I just because I wasn't, but they'd say, this is good. And so I was invited into this writing group, and it was like, how is that possible? And so what I was writing about at that time, I had written about my time crossing the Atlantic Ocean, and the one particular story that I share. And it's sort of an embodied writing experience, because I'm talking about the physical experience that I'm having while I'm having this numinous transpersonal experience on the water. So that was where my heart's desire was. And but this book, which was the first book I wrote, I was training people to be life coaches, but I didn't have a manual. I had what my PowerPoint presentations and all of those things, I'd hand those out, but I didn't have a book. So I said, I got to write a book. And so that was this. And there's 5, the chapters are really simple. Like the first chapter is called Power. The second chapter is called Success. The third chapter is called Money. So very simple in many ways, but because of my background, which is therapy, spiritual emergence and spiritual guidance and coaching, things get very deep in those conversations. So I was able to express myself and share some stories in a way that compelling for me to keep writing. And a lot, this particular book has a lot. This is in Darvel's, I think. A lot of my books are in Darvel's. But this book is not just for coaches. I really highly suggest it to a lot of people, because there's a lot of questions that are coaching questions that I would ask if I were your coach, kind of thing. So a lot of really good material in this, and it was fun. But my intention was to write a book and to write this. And like I said, I started out, Eileen, talking about that this book was part of what I saw to be a bigger book, but this is all that came. So it's like, okay, this is all there is. And honoring that rather than trying to force it to be something that it's not. And so each of my offerings is that. It's like it's allowing it to be what it is without forcing it to be what it's not.
Mhm.
Well, for me, I appreciate that, because there are many books out there where people use way too many words to repeat the message over and over again. It's like, you know what? This book could have been half its size or less. So I appreciate that.
So when people have an intention to be academic, or an intention to be that it's a testament to their greatness, or a testament to their whatever, then it can become something that's not their heart's desire. And so, but this is the way I operate. This is the way that I function. This is the way I coach people to say, what's your heart's desire? And they go, what does that have to do with writing a book? Or what does that have to do with whatever that is? But if we're living from our heart's desire, our life is much more fulfilling. And that's my whole point in doing what I do, whether it's talking here or whatever I'm doing. It's really to support and empower people to have whatever they're doing be their heart's desire. I'm going to step over here and just get a couple more books to show you a different style of what I've done. So after I did these books and this blog series that I talked about, I got inspired because I'm talking, I'm a transformational coach. I train people about what's transformation and those kinds of things. And I got inspired by this thought about, you're transforming when. And so I wrote this book in about 3 hours, literally. You're transforming when, ... And then it says 101 everyday indications that you are creating a life happier ever after. So this book, I started with one thought and it took over, and within it's 1 page pieces with some note lines on the other side, 1 page little something or others. And so, for instance, this particular page says, you're transforming when you act in alignment with your highest truth, because you're always acting in alignment with everyone's highest truth. Or, you're transforming when you effortlessly spend time doing what you enjoy, knowing all things are in right timing. So these are just little things that came to me very quickly. I wrote them down, and then like I said, the book wrote itself in about 3 hours, literally. And to do 101 of them, that was a little bit of interesting what showed up. But then the rest of it takes the time it takes to design the cover, to do the editing, to do the formatting, to get it uploaded. And I self-published, as I mentioned, Eileen. And so that the rest of it takes 6 months or whatever it takes. So that was the first one of that series. And then this one came along, which was very similar. It's called If Only My Mother Had Told Me, or Maybe I Wasn't Listening.
Mhm.
And so it's 101 pearls of wisdoms I had to figure out for myself.
Like
So-
what? Open a page and see what does it say?
Okay, it says, if only my mother had told me death is the final frontier, the process of dying can be as adventurous as the process of living. If only my
Mhm.
mother had told me there really isn't a better life, there is only a different life.
Mhm.
If only my mother had told me laughter is one of the most important ingredients in a marriage. If you aren't laughing with your partner, something has gone awry.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's that one. And then the third of this series is called Me. And Me stands for miraculous existence.
Mhm.
And it says 101 indispensable insights I didn't get in therapy. So this came one day when I was thinking about what I knew and what I experienced. And it was like, and as a therapist, you get a lot of therapy. And it was like, wow, all this stuff that I know, I didn't get in therapy. And I thought, what a great title. So I wrote this, Miraculous Existence, 101 Indispensable Insights I Didn't Get in Therapy. And these are such as, I never got in therapy that ultimately I am, with no past, no future, no striving is necessary. I'm already here. Or I never got in therapy that if my therapist says, trust me, I have an opportunity to figure out whether it's the therapist I'm needing to trust or to simply trust myself. So just stuff that showed up, right? I wrote it down. And in the fourth book of this series, I don't have, but it's called I've Arrived. Well, sort of. and it's those, I forget the 101 things, but it's 101 somethings that I got, that those moments where you go, oh my God, I know what this is about now. I know I'm in like those moments of enlightenment, transcendent moments. And you've arrived and you go, oh yeah, no, not really, and you realize that's true. But that's one of my favorites as well. But I don't have a copy of that on the island yet. So, but these are things that wanted to get written. And I've started others. I don't know that they'll get finished, but that's just what happens. So that's the heart's desire element of watching and listening. So what questions do you guys have? I know Pat's going to leave at 7, and so we can work around that.
How do you self-publish?
So self-publishing is a great conversation.
Maybe not germane.
So
Is it germane to tonight, or would you rather turf it too?
nope, because I think that's part of it's like, so first of all, the most important thing is you guys decide, I'm going to finish this because I said I would. And when those thoughts come up that says, yes, but what about who's going to read this? Or yes, but what about how this is influencing other people? Yes, but what about, then just notice those things and say, I know that, and I'm committed to finish writing this or transcribing for you, Pat. And in that process, you fulfill that part of the commitment. And then you can decide what to do later. It's like being pregnant with a baby and deciding what university it's going to go to, and we know a lot of people who, well, I not personally, but there are lots of stories of people who have their pregnant babies already signed up for some special kindergarten, that they're going to pay thousands of dollars for. But that's what people do. But it's kind of nicer just to let the baby gestate and just come into its own fruition and complete its term before you, as the author of the baby or author of this written piece, to decide what it's going to become, because maybe all it needs to become is finished. Or maybe for you, I'm thinking, Teresa, like maybe this is the place where you get to decide how to find your voice, rather than saying, well, here's what one editor says, here's what another editor says, but here's where you get to be the voice for yourself. And I think that's part of what you said here tonight. And Eileen, for you to be in that question of, this feels like it needs to be real. And so I'm going to, real as in my personal story. And so I'm going to write it that way. And then decide afterwards, once it's done, what I'm going to do with it. Okay.
I like that.
When we let that other stuff, how am I going to take care of a teenager? It's like, no, you're 6 months pregnant. Yeah, but someday it's going to be a teenager and I'm going to have to know what to do. It's like, yeah, you're going to get there. But right now, let's just kind of take care of and nourish and be present to the bringing of this into fulfillment.
Mhm.
My tummy has got.
It sounds like one thing you're saying is that you're not writing it for somebody else. It's
That's right.
yourself that. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, that's important to remember for me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that up, because I think it's the most important thing, that you're writing this book for yourself.
Yeah.
When I crossed the Atlantic Ocean, I was looking for writers who had written about going across the Atlantic Ocean, because I wanted to hear their experience. But the people who are writing the books were, their intention was a how-to book. It wasn't here's the experience of being, in the middle of the ocean, with whales all around. It wasn't, they weren't experiential. And it's like, I was looking for me to write the book. Now I haven't written that book yet. I wrote quite a bit of it in the dissertation part, but I was looking for me to write that. And so haven't written that. I don't know if I will, but that's the point, is I'm writing the books for me. I needed to write this book about, if only my mother had told me, but maybe I wasn't listening. I needed to hear these things, So it's we're really doing it for ourselves. And when people say, who's the audience of your book? Number one has to be you. Because if you're not going to read it, what's the point? When I read these things, especially, I can't, wherever I put them, I can't believe I wrote this. This doesn't sound like, the C- person. It's, it's not, I love reading this person. And that's because I wrote it in that way, I was the audience. So I love reading that, but I don't take credit at all for these things. I just write, So I really appreciate you saying that, Pat, that number one, you're doing this for you.
Mm-hmm.
When I decided to publish, and I tried getting a publisher, but right now it's almost ridiculous to do that, because all they're going to do is ask you to have everything that you would need to self-publish, and it will save you thousands of dollars. They ask you for how many Facebook people you have, who's in your social media, what's your program for launching the book. All of these questions that a publisher wants to know. And once you have that, you're paying them for nothing, basically. If you do it for yourself, everything comes back to you. So really, I've looked at different possibilities and came up with, this is the best way to do that. I've worked with a company called Lightning Source, which is part of Ingram. I think it's Ingram Content. And Ingram is a big, huge distributor of books all around the world. So it made sense for me to go directly to Ingram to publish my book. So that's how I started that. And they're very clear about what they need in terms of specifications. You can do whatever you want in so many ways. And it basically costs a certain amount per page and size. And if it's black and white on the inside, that's great. If you want to pay for color pages, that's just more expensive. But those kinds of decisions get to be very simple when you get to that point. So self-publishing, there's tons of different self-publishers out there, but I went, again, like I said, I was working, I don't even remember who I started with. And this woman said, oh, I do Lightning Source. And I respected her. And it's like, because of Ingram, she worked at a bookstore. And it's like, that makes perfect sense. And I didn't have to buy 1,000 books because it's print on demand. And they hook you up with Barnes and Nobles. They hook you up with Amazon and those kinds of things. So I don't have to purchase 1,000 books and warehouse them. I can, you guys can go to Amazon. If you don't go to Tarbles, you go to Amazon, look up my books, buy one. Lightning Source prints it off and ships it to you. Just like that. They do all that work. And I get $6 a book, I think. Even if I get $4 a book, that's a pretty good deal. Otherwise, in terms of if you're working with the publisher, you might get 60 cents a book. So that's a really good thing. The other thing is ebooks, super easy. Amazon has its own ebook publishing process, very simple to do, and you just do it. Okay, so those kinds of mechanics become easier when you know that. Let me say something again about Ingram. Is Lightning Source was one of their original places for publishers. And I call myself the Paradigm Shifts Publishing Company. So, but it's called Ingram Sparks. So if you go there and you see the different varieties, you go, wait, I'm confused. But if you go to Lightning Source, it'll take you to a page. I think it says Ingram Content or something like that. And then it'll say Sparks. And that would be a place probably where you would go with your first books if you wanted to go in that direction.
And then what will happen? What sort of an initial capital would you have to say that you are going to have to be ready to put out? Financial investment? What's the process?
It just depends. I would say that each book would be about $1,000 to create.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then whatever monies you want to use to promote, that's up to you. But by the time you get somebody to design your cover, back and front, and then there's the formatting of the inside. And I had one person would do the covers and format it, which was really helpful when you've got all these lines and wanting it to set up in such a way that it looks nice. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So those things cost. So, the simplicity of it is, you talk to people who do those kinds of things, graphic designers or whatever, and say, what do you charge? So I'm, this book, nope. Hang on one second. I think we're getting close to 7. This is another book I wrote. That's my grandson.
Oh, cute.
And this one's called Cultivating Spirituality in Children, 101 Ways to Make Every Child's Spirit Soar. Now, this was inspired because my daughter was pregnant with Andrew, and it was like, okay, so I want to be a really good spiritual grandma, and I'm going to teach him all these spiritual things. And then I went, wait a second, what if they don't like what I want to teach? What if he isn't interested? Like, what do I do? And then I realized it's really about me being the best me I can be. And what does that mean? And so that's what this is about. So that's how that's how this got inspired. And the woman who is the graphic designer, this was a photograph of Andrew that I had that we worked with, and the rest of it. And she formatted it for me. And again, these are a little bit longer sections, but just things that were important to me. Now, the inside, though, I had gone through Catholic school, and she'd gone through Catholic school. So there were some things that I talked about in here in terms of growing up and how I evolved into where I was to write this book. And she helped me word by word, page by page. This book cost $6,000.
Wow.
Because she charged $50 an hour, and we did the work. But it's beautiful, it's everything that I would want it to be. I don't think I've sold $1,000 worth of books, but that's not the point. The point is you bring to the book what it needs to be. And the crafting of it was such a beautiful experience, because I would say something and she would say something, and we would just twist it or turn it or move it in a way that just this exquisite experience came through us, both of us, as we're working it. So things can get expensive. That got out of control. But But I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it.
Hmm.
And that's, you know, that's that. So can it get expensive? Sure. Can it get inexpensive? Sure. And it's really, you know, you can design your own covers and you can do all of that work yourself. It's not that difficult anymore. So did that answer your question, Eileen?
Yes.
Okay.
And what about the last book that you, when I said, oh, that's your, is that your first communion picture? Was that more of a life retrospective, autobiographical, memoir? What would you characterize?
Well, I call it a autobiographical as opposed to it's an autobiography because even though there's a lot of, it's all stories about me and my growing up and the choices I made. And it's also a way of sharing with people the opportunity to look at what is in life. So does that make sense? So a bit of teaching, a bit of, what's the word? Insight, those kinds of things, as opposed to just story. There's some insights and some perspectives that are shared. So that makes it more autobiographical. And I have a thing, this is one of my issues about writing this book was, I don't want it to be about me, right? Here's an autobiography about me, but going, oh no, it can't be about me because that means I'm like egotistical. So rather than calling it an autobiography, I call it autobiographical, and that gets me off that hook. So we all have our ways of working around these rationalizations if we want to. So I'm going to swing back to Teresa. How you doing over there?
Good. Yeah. This has been really, really nice. Learning your process. Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Good. Any other questions that you guys have? I know I had an agenda, and you guys have an agenda that's different. And I think we kind of got to the point of just finish the book, period. Write it for you. Write it and so that it speaks to you. Then once that's done, then decide. And unless the cover just comes to you, it's like, I knew this was the cover of that book. I knew it, right? So if those things come to you, then you can begin to play with those. When I would have the woman that designed the covers for these 3 books, they're all very simple. They're all the same branding-ish. And so when I got the book title, I've Arrived, in 101, whatever that was, I just called Maureen up and said, hey, we got another one in the oven. And we knew what it was going to look like, except the cover is, I think, more purple. Or, you know, she designed this one too. We had a lot more work to do on this one, so for some reason. But if it comes to you, it just comes to you, and you got to create it, you know, and that's the fun part. But first of all, get that part done, because that's the part that you're honoring for yourself. That's the most important thing. And then if you want to put it into the world, great. And that was the second part of this. It's like, I'm going to get it into a book form, and I'm going to sell 1 book. That's my commitment, right? Get it done, sell 1 book. And I did. And of course, I wanted to sell millions, and that hasn't happened, but it's not the point. And my daughter, who's in marketing, she's like, Mom, you just write your books and then they kind of disappear. It's like, but that's what happens. I'm not into launching, those kinds of things. It's like they get written and they're in the world, and that's what they're meant to do. I love them. But they don't have to make a lot of money out of them. So it really is up to you what you want to do. That's I'm just saying is, first I committed to finishing it. Then I committed to making 1 book. You know, I mean, I'm making the books, and then 1 person bought them. That was my commitment. I fulfilled that. So just honor your commitment to yourselves. That's the most important thing. Any other questions that you guys have?
A really good note to end on, for sure.
So 2 things I want to share is if you guys want some coaching or some work, I'm happy to work with you. I'm on the island. That's great. The second thing is I started on YouTube. I do YouTube podcasts or YouTube lives and things like that. I started something called Inward Bound Bootcamp for Self-Transformation. And they're 20 10-minute videos, 10 minutes or less videos on incrementally moving towards just what transformation is. And so it's not like, oh, you're going to transform in 4 weeks. It's just like, here's the process and see if you like it, see if it's fun for you. So if you have any interest in that, you can find that on my website, and you can also find that on YouTube if you just go to Dr. Rosie Kuhn, I think it is Dr. Rosie Kuhn and the Paradigm Shifts. So, but it's called Inward Bound Bootcamp for Self-Transformation. It's fun, it's free, it's quick, and I think people are liking it. So I just launched it on Monday, so it's brand new. So
It'd be a great name for a band. Paradigm Shifts.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts?
Did you say you're on the island? Do you live on the island,
I do.
Carol?
I
Oh,
do.
okay.
I'm out in West Sound,
All right.
far away.
Far, far away. Over.
I'm out by Doe Bay.
Oh, that's way out there.
Oh, I love Dobe out there. Yeah.
Is that your next book, Far, Far Away?
I like that. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I lived in Nova Scotia, there was somebody who wrote a book. Oh man, Far Out but Not Far Enough, I think was the name of it. It was great. Far out but not far enough. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for
Yes.
joining tonight. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna thank everyone for joining, but any more comments or questions?
Well, I apologize for being late. I had another meeting that was going on and I was so looking forward to coming. So I
good.
appreciate your welcoming me in. I wish I'd heard what other people said, but I really enjoyed this. Yeah. Thank
Good.
you. It
Well, I'm
was
happy to
nice.
come back and do more. If you guys want more, just let Carol know and I'll come back.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, you guys.
It was a lovely gathering.
Good.
Thanks a lot, Rosie.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Nice to
And-
see you, Pat.
Thank you.
Bye, Teresa. Bye, Eileen. Bye, Margie.
Bye, Carol.
Hi, thanks for
Bye,
joining.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.